So till this point, we were able to create the token, the JWT token. So just to show you how it was looking, so if you go back here, and if you click on login, so we are passing the details. If you can see the body, we are sending the login details, which is Naveen and at the rate 123. When you click on send, the request goes to the server. And then on the server side, it verifies the username password. And if the username is password is correct, in that case, it generates a token, which you can see here. And of course, using this token, I want to do other activities. Example, I've done the login once, right? And I got the token. And now let's say from the application, if I want to access any resource, example, if I want to fetch students, and I don't want to pass the username password now. So in the earlier scenario, we were sending the username password, but now we don't want to do that. We want to send a token, which is a better token. And here we should be able to paste it. And we are doing that. But when you click on send, this is not working and we want to make it work. So generating token done, but we have to validate the token and give the access to the user. That's what you have to do in this video. Okay, in fact, this token is also valid. We have checked that on jwt.io. We got the details, we got the claims, and we got other details. So things are working out. It's just that now we have to validate token and we have to make this work. Now, how we are going to do that? So of course, there are multiple steps involved. The first thing you have to do is when you send a request to the server, by default, see, there's one thing I wanted to point it out. If you go to security config, we have mentioned that for this two requests, the register and for login, you don't have to check for authentication. So basically they are permitted. But for all the other requests, it will be authenticated. That means when you request for the students, it will be authenticated. And by default, the authentication we follow is user password authentication. So by default, that filter comes into picture. Now, if you remember, we have talked about filters, right? So in Spring Security, we have multiple filters. One of the filter is user password authentication filter. This is a filter which gets activated and then it checks for username password. Now what we are saying is, hey, I don't want this filter to be activated first. Before this filter, I want to make this filter, which is UPAF, as your second filter, and the first filter should be your JWT filter. Now this will check for the token, right? Now once you verify token as a first filter, then it will send the request to the UPAF filter by saying, hey, I have verified and this is a user already logged in. So I'm confirming that. So you can just continue with the other work. So this is what we want to do. So that means we have to add a filter before the user password authentication filter. And the way you can do that is very simple. It's not actually, this video is also very lengthy. So just be with me. And there are a lot of things going on. And if you watch it with me and if you write the code with me, it will make much more sense. So the first thing you do is, before you build, I'm in the security config and we are working with security filter chain. Basically, we're working with filter chain. And before you say build, what you do is you add a filter before the user authentication filter, right? So you will say add filter before. So you can add filter anytime. You can add filter at particular point. You can add filter after or before. So I want to add before the user authentication filter. So I will do that. The first parameter is actual filter. So let's say I want to say this is a JWT filter. So that's the object we have to pass. The second one is the class, the filter class. So I will say user name password authentication filter. Now this is what we have to specify. So what I'm doing is I'm saying that, hey, before you hit this particular filter, use this filter. But what is this filter? We have to work with this. So in that case, you will go up here and create the object of private JWT filter, JWT filter. So this is what? So we have created the object here. We are doing auto wire and then that object will be used here. Okay, but the problem is, and it says that this JWT filter is not able to find it. So it's very simple. You can just simply say control space, let's import the package. Oh, it says no suggestion. That means in your library of Spring Security, we don't have this filter by default. And that's where you get the opportunity to create a new filter. I know I'm using some positive words here, opportunity. Yeah, we have to get another class to make it work. So let's do it. Anyway, we are doing this only once. So I will just click here and say, hey, create a class. And when I want to do that, maybe in the same package config, logically it should be in a separate package called filter package, but config works for this example. I will click on OK and we got this new class. Now I want this to behave like a filter. Okay, how do you make something behave like a filter? What you do is you extend those properties, right? So if I want to be rich, I want to get adopted by some billionaire, right? So here I want to extend. I want to make this a child class of some parent class which has a filter capability. So one of the filter we are going to use here is, that's one of the class we are going to extend is once per request filter. I know, very nice name to give to a filter or a class. This is called once per request filter. See, the reason is every time you send a request, you want a filter to get activated. And in the filter chain, you want this filter to be executed only once. So for every request, you want this filter to be executed only once. And that's why you're saying once per request filter. Now it is giving you some error. I was not expecting, but let's see. This once per filter is actually an abstract class, which means there might be some extra abstract methods which we have to implement. And if you scroll down, all the methods are defined, but one method is there. Yeah, there's always one. So one method is there which is called doFilterInternal, which is the abstract method. That means if you want this to work, we need to implement it. So let's click on implement and okay. So this is a filter we have to work with. Now, if you go back to our sessions on Spring Web, we have talked about HTTP servlet. Behind the scene, everything is servlet, right? And it gives you two objects to work with. Request object to work with the data in the request of the user. Response object if you want to add something to the response. And here, I just want to work with a request. So let's use request. But what I want to do, that's a big question. See, it's actually very simple. See, on the client side, you are sending a request, right, for the students. And with that request, you are sending a token as well. Now, this token, when you receive on the server side, you will not get the token as this, just the token. What you will receive is, can I type here? No, I can't type here. Maybe I will type in body. So what I receive from the server, not a good place to type, right? Okay. So I will just go back here and I will write a comment. From the client side, what you will get is better. That's the first word. And then you will get the token. I think token is this. Yeah. So this is what you get from the client side. So it starts with better, and then a space, and then it starts with the actual token. This is what you get from the client side, right? Now, what you have to do is you have to get this token and you have to cut that better part. You just have to focus on this part, get this token and validate it. So simple, right? Okay, not that simple. I mean, breaking that is simple. Validating is difficult. So let's be with me. So how will I get this thing, the entire stuff? And actually it's a part of request. So it sends the data, this better and the token in the request object in the headers. So what I can do is I can get the headers. So I will say security, I will say auth header. So header will have a lot of things. I don't want everything. So from the request, I just want a header which talks about authorization. This is the only header I need. It will have a lot of headers, but I just want authorization. And once you got this auth header, this will have this token, but I want only the last part. So I will save this token somewhere in the token, and by default, I will keep it null. I want the username as well, because somewhere we have to work with the username, because you will generate a token, you will verify the token with the help of username. And now let's get started. So first thing I want to check is, do we have any authorization header? So let's check that. So if there is a auth header which is not equal to null, in that case, you have to continue. So that's the first thing you want to check. You want to make sure that this is not null. And you have to also verify, do we have a better token? So again, I will check auth header. So it should start with better. So you can even say B, but to be on safe side, I will say it should start with better. In case if it is starting with that, I will set the token, and I want to fetch the token now. And fetching token is very easy. You will say auth header dot. You don't want the entire string, right? You just want this particular token here. So I want to skip these letters. Now, what are these letters? So I will start with index of 0. So this is B is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6. The space is also there, right? So I want to start from 7. So it should start this substring from 7, index number 7. And I want to get the username from the token. So I will say username equal to. Now, how will you get the username from the token? Because token is encoded, right? So you can see this, you have to find username from this. As a human also, you can't do that. So we have to do something for the program to work. But I will make sure that I do that in the service. So I will use service object, and we don't have the service auto-wired here. So I will say auto-wired, private JWT service. Okay. So I will use this, and in this, I will make sure that I have an object. I have a method called extract username. Or maybe I will have username. So for where exactly it will extract the username from the token. And you can see there's a red here because we don't have this method in the service yet. So what I will do is I will say, okay, create this method of extract token. And at this point, I will just return empty. We'll code it later. So this is empty, so that will not get any error. And you can see there's no error here. Now, once you got this two, now we have to verify. So once you got the details, you got the token now, you got username. So I will check if, so the username should not be equal to null. That's the first thing I want to check. And I also want to make sure that it's not already authenticated. So if the object is already authenticated, why you have to verify all those things? So I will say security context holder dot get context dot get authentication, and this should be null. So if it is not null, then I don't want to continue because it's already authenticated. So I will just continue with this. So this should be null. If these two are matching, see, ultimately what we have to do is we have to validate token. See, we are into filter now, right? So see, if this filter is success, then we'll forward it to the user pass authentication filter, right? Now, how do you specify that this is success? The first thing you have to do is you have to validate the token. If the token is valid, in that case, you will create the authentication object. And that's what you have to do here. So to do that, I want to verify, right? So I will say JWT service dot, in this particular class, I want a method which will validate the token because all the things we are doing in the JWT service, right? So let's do that. So there should be a method called validate token, and you have to pass the token. Now, when you're validating, you have to check two things. One, in the token should be valid. And second, the username which it is mentioning, it should be part of a database, right? And to refer to database, I will pass the object of user details, and we have to create this object somewhere. Now, where should I create the object? I can do that here. So I can say user details. You have to import the package. User details. And then I can actually auto-wire if you keep it on top, but I think it will create a cyclic redundancy. So what you can do is you can get the hold on the application context object. So I will say auto-wire and application context. Remember when we were learning about Spring framework, we have used this application context to get the bean. So here also I will say context dot get bean of type user details dot class. But the problem is it will give you an empty object. I don't want empty object. What I want is, I want the object of user details which will have the user data. Now, if you go back to my details service, in this you have this method called load user by username, and this will give you the object of user details. That means if I ask for the object of my user details service dot class, and from this object, if I can get load by username, and if I pass the username here, it will fire database and it will give me the username, right? And not just username, it will give me the entire user detail object. Okay, so that's what we are doing here. But if you can see in JWT service, we don't have this method, so I will just create one. So the method name is validate token, and at this point I will return true. Okay, let's go back to the filter. Now if the token is valid, in that case, remember we have the next filter, we have to make it work. So the next filter is, next filter will work with the username, password, authentication filter, but I want to pass a token there. So I will create a token and I will say new username, password, authentication token. Now this token asks you for three things. One is a principal, next is the credentials, and third is authorities. So user principals we already have, which is the object of user details, which will have all the details about the user. Credentials I don't want to mention, so I will keep it null. Authorities I have is, so I will get it from user details dot get authorities. Okay, that is what it was asking, and we are getting, is it a warning? Variable token is already defined in the scope. Where exactly I'm using token? Okay, so I will use something else. Okay, token we already have it here, right? So this should be auth token, if it makes it happy. Now auth token knows about the user, but auth token has no idea about the request object, right? So this request object will have a lot of data, and we are just creating this object and we are passing it. So this object should also know about the request object. So you will say set details, and to specify that, you have to use web authentication details source. Sometimes you have to just remember the class names and stuff. It becomes very complex. You just get into it. And with this object, you will say build details and you will pass the request object. And now once you have this auth token ready, it's just you have to set this in the context. So this particular thing, which is authentication, should not be there by default. And that's what we are checking for null. Now, once it is verified, you have to set the authentication. So you will say security context holder dot. Now instead of saying get authentication, you will say set authentication and you will pass the auth token object. So by doing this, you are adding the token in the chain. And once it is ready, you will simply pass the request or the filter. So now you will say filter chain dot do filter. So continue with the filter because this is one filter. Go for the next filter once it is done. And by doing this, you will pass two objects, request and response, and done. So filter work is done. So the JWT filter, it will validate the token, it will create the authentication object, it will pass it next. So now it will, we don't have to pass the username password. Now, if you're thinking this is done, not exactly. What is missing now is this. If you go back to your JWT service, we do have two methods which are empty. You need to make sure that this is completed. Now, of course, we can type the entire code here, but then when you got a token and when you want to extract the username, it's not a simple process. We have to decode it. We have to fetch the claims. From that, we have to fetch the username. For validating a token, we have to do a lot of steps. You have to check for the expiration time. You have to check if the account is not, a lot of things are involved, right? So we can do that here, but what I want to do is I just want to copy paste so that we can save some time. So basically, this is the thing we will do. So I will explain the code to you, don't worry. Okay, so this is the code which you have to work with. So if you can see, if you go up, this is what we have done before. But now we are saying that you have to extract the username. Now to extract the username, it's not just extracting a username, right? First you have to get the claims because username is a part of the claim. And that's what you can see here. So we are creating a method called extract claims in which you are passing the claims and you're passing the token. Now in this extract claim, basically it will fetch the claim, it will extract all the claim. And that's what we are doing here. Extracting the claim with the help of signing key because you have to also use the key to do that. And we are fetching it here in the claims, and that's what you are returning it here. So from that you will get the username. So you can see from the claim we are getting the subject. And if you go down, we also have a method called validating. But for validity, of course, you have to check if the token is expired or not, and that's what we are doing here. So it's checking if the expiration time is before this, then it will give you false, otherwise it will give you true. And of course it will return true if it is expired, then you have to check if it should not be expired. And this is how you're extracting the expiration time. So basically what you're doing is you are fetching the claims. I pasted this code because it's more redundant code and you'll be doing it only once. That's why we pasted it. Important point to observe, there are a few changes from the last time I did this. So first of all, let me just import claims. That's one. And import this function type. And one more change, they have done some changes in the new version. So the code is for the older version. For the new version, they have made some changes. The first thing they did is, if you go to parser builder, there's no parser builder. So JWS it's a class and it has a method called parser. And then this parser has a method. So if you can see, earlier we used to use set sign-in key. But now we have to use something called it's verify with. So instead of signing key, we have to say verify with. But it takes the type of secret key, not the key, because get key gives you key. So what I can do is I can just change the type of it and this should work. So I will use secret key here so that it will not give issue here. So remember this, we have to make one change. In the get key, you have to return secret key. Now depending upon which version you're using. So if you're using the version which I'm using, then you have to make these changes. So anything before this works perfectly for the earlier code. But since I'm using 0.12 and anything after that, you have to make these changes. So go back here to the JWT service. Okay, there's also change in the pass claim. So I will first of all do enter here. So instead of pass claim, they made some good changes. So now it is signed claims because it makes sense because it is already signed. Instead of body, they now call it as a payload. And how will you know all these things? If you go to the method documentation, you will see what they have replaced it with. Again, that code will work. It's just that it's good to go for the new versions, a new code. Don't go for deprecated methods. And that's it. That should work. And where you will find this code, you can check the description. You will find a link for the GitHub repository. If it's not there, let us know. We'll put it there. And now, after making these changes, I hope this will work. And if it works, I will tell you the entire flow, what we were doing. I hope nothing is null, nowhere. Okay, cool. So this got restarted and we got an error. It says, okay, I think... No. Filter, we are using AutoWire, but this itself is not a component. That's what it says. Okay, so let's make this component, just restart, and there's no error. Let's go back to Postman. First of all, let's do the login. So I will click on this. And okay, we got the token, though there's no problem with the token. I will just copy this. And now when you are sending a request for the students, you don't have to pass, of course, the body is not important, or body is important maybe. You're getting it, right? So we don't have to pass the data. In the authorization, we have to pass the token. We are not passing username password now. Click on send. It worked. You can see it says okay. So what is happening behind the scene? Let's go with the flow again. The first thing you're doing is you are generating a token. Now, who is responsible to generate a token? If you go back to your security config, we are saying that the authentication manager now, this time we have a hold on it. And we are creating something called login form. So if you see user controller, we got something called login. And inside this login, we are doing verify. And in verify, we are using this filter to achieve that. So once we got this, we are generating a token. So once it is verified, the user is verified, we are generating a token, right? Now in this token generation, what we are doing is we are doing all those steps, building a token with the help of claims. We are signing it, where it's here. We are signing it. We have subject, issue date, expiration. After doing all those things, what you get is the token, right? Now, next time when you send a request, you are sending a token. Now, since we are sending a new request, and in that request, you are not passing username password, in that case, we have to mention, hey, don't go for username password, go with the JWT filter. Now what we are doing in filter is, in the filter, basically we are saying that, first of all, get the token from the user or the request, check if the token is not empty or token starts with a bearer. If it is there, get the username, get the token, get the data from the database based on what username is you're passing, and verify if it is matching or not. If it is matching, of course, you have to validate token. If it is matching, you have to create a new authentication object, and you have to set that in the context. Once it is done, you're through, because for the next filter, you have specified that I do have the authentication. But there's one problem. In the validate token, we have to actually validate token. And to do that, we have to extract the username. To extract the username, we have to extract the claims. And to extract the claims, a lot of steps are involved, right? So yeah, that's what we have done in the entire flow. And by doing this, all this thing have been done. Now you know what is Spring Security. Now you know how to generate a token. How do you verify the token? Now you can make your application secure. So I hope all these things make sense. We'll try to implement this in our project, which we are building. And maybe it will take some time. See you in the next video. Till that point, keep learning. Bye-bye.